Hello and welcome to Hexed Encountered. My name's Joe. Today I'm going to be doing a first look, or maybe an introduction would be a better way to say it, at the fourth game in my Platoon-Level tactical series. This is Mark H. Walker's Platoon Commander Deluxe, The Battle of Kursk. This one's designed by David K. Van Hoos and is actually the only game of this series to actually be a Flying Pig Games game. There are several others, I think 5. They're all actually Tiny Battle publishing games, which is kind of the sister company of Flying Pig and is structured more as like a small publisher with components that aren't as deluxe, let's say, as the components in Flying Pig games. So this game is a game that I enjoy a lot, and the system is also used in his World War III, or Mark Walker's, that is, World War III, The Long Road. So let's get back to the matter at hand, and that is this game right here. So this is the fourth game, and since I usually do a first look or an unboxing initially, and this game I've been playing, so it's all punched out and played and so on and so forth. So I'm just going to kind of go over the components, talk about how the game works a little bit as an introduction, and then when I do the playthrough, hopefully you'll have watched this and have an idea of how the game plays. I do have 3 other videos on this game from back in February of this year. That would be 2023, which was part of my Flying Pig February. And there were 3 videos there covering the Battle of Pokrovka, or at least one part of it. There are a bunch of scenarios on the battle covering both the northern and southern face of the battle. Obviously, this was a massive battle in 1943, July of 1943, on the Eastern Front between the Germans and the Soviet Union. So let's take a look at, first of all, let's just kind of talk about the components, and then we'll get into some of the mechanics. So the game comes, as you would expect, with a rule book, right? Every game comes with a rule book. The rule book is really thin. There's not a whole lot here, and this includes the scenarios. So the rules themselves take up, as you can see here, 9. It actually ends on page 10, but it's basically 9 pages if you don't really count this one, which is page 1. So it's 9 pages of rules. General concepts. The maps are fictitious landscape, so it's, terrain that you would see around Kursk. So you do get a bunch of 10-sided dice, 6 of them to be exact. Game pieces, we have our 2 units here, and I'll show you the units so you can see that this is a leg unit. This is its high explosive factor, which is basically anti-personnel. Movement factor, that's its assault range. The CAF, close assault factor. The APF is the armor piercing factor. I'll talk about the background numbers and the color of the text in a bit. Armored fighting vehicles would have an armor rating as well. And this explosion mark here, if it's blue, there are blue ones and there are orange ones, and they employ column shifts on the fire result table, which we'll see in a moment. So that's what that is for. So units, so basically the counters are broken down into units and markers, and there aren't that many different types of markers. You have moved, fired, disrupted, wreck, aid, dug in, barbed wire, mines, aircraft, and focus. And I'll talk about all of those either in this video or in the gameplay video. Stacking, 2 units per hex, all times, no more than that. Unit types, 2 basic types, leg and fighting vehicle, AFV. Eligible units, this is an important one. If a unit moves or fires, it's not eligible. If it's disrupted, it's not eligible. So basically, somebody who doesn't have a marker on them is considered an eligible unit, and that enables them to take an action, as you would expect. Action cards. There are cards in this game. The game comes with 18 of them. You can see that I have some white ones here. These are bonus cards. They were an add-on. There are 9 of these, so I have a total of 27 cards. The cards have 2 basically actions that you can play. one for the Soviets, one for the Germans. You can see it tells you what phase of the turn sequence you can play them in and what they do, right? So this one basically is like a trump card to cancel an enemy action by the Soviets. This one removes, or it's a die roll modifier. It just reduces your roll by 1, which makes your fire more effective. You have artillery barrage and all kinds of things in here. The add-on ones brought in some new stuff, like sewer movement if you're in a city, or interceptor. And down here, you can see there's high altitude bombing, Maskirovka, vodka, hey. So there's a lot of variety in here, and we'll see these when I do the gameplay. Outline of play: initiative phase, dice off. If it's a tie and it's not the first turn, it goes to the side that did not have initiative in the previous turn. If it is the first turn, you just re-roll. You draw your action cards. There's a rally phase where you can try to rally any disrupted units. There is a fire phase, and in the fire phase, the initiative side goes first, then it alternates back and forth between the two sides. Once they both pass or can't attack anymore, that ends, and you go to the movement phase, and then the initiative side goes first and moves all their stuff, and then the other side goes and moves all their stuff. And units have to be eligible to move, so they can't have fired in the fire phase. Close assault phase comes after that. Then housekeeping, where you remove fired and moved markers. The aid and focus phase, we'll talk about that in a little bit. And we move on to the next turn. So here's aid and focus, as I said. So aid allows you, basically, this is your aid marker. So what this allows you to do is re-roll on a morale check, basically. What this one allows you to do is re-roll during an attack. It also allows you to try and re-roll an initiative roll. So this is useful. They both have a single die and a two dice side. If you have this on the map with a unit, it can move with the unit. You can also move it individually by itself, up to 3 hexes, as long as it hasn't moved with a unit in that turn. And if you don't do an action with it, it will go from 1 die to 2 dice, and then you can actually do two re-rolls, or do 1 and it will use up and go down to 1. You can never lose them permanently. If they come off the map, you can then replace them on the map in the next turn, in the next aid and focus phase. Fire combat. So, like I said, you alternate, and the way combat works is pretty straightforward. So let's say we have an infantry unit here, and it has an HE fire factor of 4. The green is its range, and I'll show you the player aid cards in a moment, but the green range is basically short range. Black, on the other hand, is adjacent only. And so if anything but black has the ability to shoot both short range, normal range, and long range, varying distances. Green, for example, 1 is short, 3 is adjacent, and 5 is long. So you can shoot up to 5, but you take a 2-column shift to the left, which is bad if you are attacking at long range with someone with a green, or anyone based on their color. So if we looked at, say, our SU-152 here, this has red, and so red with a 12 firepower, this is a very powerful unit, of course. Short range for this is 3, normal is 5, and long is 10. So this is a gun that can get out there and shoot you at long range. Obviously, you take a penalty, as I mentioned. But a 2-column shift on a 12 is a lot better than a 2-column shift on a 4. So basically, you add all that up, and here's the player aid card with the fire result table. So you add up the firepower, and you'll get a column, and then you'll do shifts based on range or flanking fire, etc., terrain. All that stuff can affect in here. And then you might have some die roll modifiers based on cards or based on superscripts, which, for example, let me find one with a superscript. Panzer IV. So the Panzer IV here, its armor factor is a 4, and you see the -1 next to it. That means if it's attacked, it gets its 4, which will shift your firepower column to the left by basically 4. Not columns, just number-wise. And then you would take a -1 on the die roll. So that's a die roll modifier. Then there's also close assault, which we'll see in a moment, but this is the range bands. So all of the units will have ranges within one of these colors, and then it tells you what the ranges are. And here you have the move and fire. Orange takes a 1-column shift to the left. Blue takes a 2-column shift to the left. So for example, if we were shooting with that SU-152 at long range, it's 12. It would take a 2-column shift to the left down to 8. And then if it was shooting at that Panzer IV, it would actually go down to a 4, and we would do a -1 on the die roll modifier. That's how that works. Pretty straightforward. This game is not complicated at all. So after fire, you can also attack either leg or armored fighting vehicles, not both on the same attack. So if you had 2 infantry and a hex, you could attack both infantry, obviously. If you had an infantry and a tank, because it's stacking limits 2, if you had an infantry and attack, you'd have to say I'm attacking the infantry or I'm attacking the armored fighting vehicle, one or the other. Results of combat. First hit will disrupt, second hit will reduce, third hit will eliminate. So if you get disrupted and you take a second hit, you get reduced. If you then rally, you're still reduced, but it would then take 2 more hits, one to disrupt and then one to take a step loss to actually eliminate you. So all the units have, to look at our SU-152 again, they all have a full power side and a reduced side. So when your platoon gets chewed up a little bit, it gets reduced. If it takes another hit while it's disrupted, it's eliminated. And then it becomes one of these, a wreck. So as I mentioned, there are markers. There's disrupted, moved, fired, dug in, flanked, minefield. So lots of different markers. You saw the wreck marker. There's also aircraft. The Germans have a Stuka, and the Soviets have an IL-2. Movement, you do have transports. In this scenario, I'll be playing, the Germans have an Opel Blitz. The circle on its movement factor indicates that it can carry units. There are some units that have a 0 movement factor, like this mortar. You can see it has a 0. This would be transported by the truck. You can load and unload. It costs half your movement factor to do so. There are some scenarios that have tank riders, which this one does not. You can always move at least 1 hex unless it's prohibited. And you do have zones of control. Really basic zones of control. The 6 hexes around the unit. If you move into that hex, it costs 1 extra movement point. And I didn't show the terrain chart, but here's the terrain chart. Really simple. You have your movement costs for leg and armored fighting vehicles, / between. There's some notes. Whether it blocks line of sight. There's also rolling terrain, which is right here. And you can see it says yes with a 1 superscript. That superscript is it has to be 2 adjacent ones to block. So you can see through 1, but not 2. And then you have fire combat column shifts to the left for leg and armored fighting vehicles. So as I mentioned, this is really straightforward. Line of sight works as you would think it would. You have hills, you have forests, you have cities, all those block line of sight. You can see across from one hill to another. You can't see units that are behind a hill, etc., etc. Crest lines, all that stuff. Very straightforward, just kind of almost identical to what we've seen in the other games in the series. It's very straightforward. Close assault, if you're next to a unit, when you get to the close assault phase and you have not fired, you can assault them. And you can have multiple units assault and they can flank. So the way it works is you have 2 units and they don't have an adjacent hex side, then they're flanking, basically. And we'll see that in the game because I will try some flanking attacks once I get to playing. Fire support, artillery, airstrikes. Those are off board. Those are played by cards. So if we go through here, here's artillery barrage with a 6 firepower attack. There's also airstrikes in here, if I can find one. Airstrike. Conduct an airstrike attack. Now when you do an airstrike attack, you use the firepower of the aircraft. So here's our Stuka. It has an armor-piercing attack of 12 and an HE attack of 8. The IL-2, on the other hand, has only a 6 for armor-piercing, and it has the same 8 for HE. Mortars, they're on board and you have counters for them. So here is a Soviet mortar, for example. You can see its firepower is 12. It has a blue range, and the white box indicates that it doesn't have extended range or any other adjustments. Its range is its range. It's normal. Then you have some fortifications such as minefields, which we saw, dug in, which we saw. There's also wire, which I did not show you, but there are wire counters as well. And they all have various effects, and I won't go into that too much right now. Then you have your scenarios. So there are northern face operations, and then there are also southern face operations. So here's some of the Battle of Prokhorovka, southern face operations. There's a lot of scenarios in here. Scenario 11A, 11B, 11C, and 12. So there's 12, but 11 is actually 3 scenarios. So that is the rule book and kind of the way the game works. Here's our turn track, if you're interested in seeing that. There is a game turn marker. You flip it for the Germans or the Soviets. Here's our sequence of play that we already kind of went over. Let's take a look now at the maps. So this game comes with 2 maps. They are mounted maps. They have big hexes. So this here is map A, and you're seeing most of it. There may be a little bit off the top and bottom here, but this is the map. So we have our terrain here, as you would also expect to see. We have forest. These are basically hills or ridges. The darker the terrain, the higher the hill. So this is a 2-level hill. This is a 1-level hill. We have town. So this is map B. This is the map we're going to be playing on, actually. It's got 2 towns in it. It has the stream here, or river, depending on the scenario. There's a bridge. There's a bridge here as well. This here is rolling terrain, or this is rolling and this is cultivated. That's what it is. So this is rolling terrain. So this is the terrain. Like if I was here, I could not see this hex because there's 2. Let me slide that up. If I were here, 2 hexes of rolling terrain, I could not see this hex. That's pretty much how that works. So this is the base game, 2 maps. The expansion, Tracks in the Mud, includes a 3rd map. It also includes late war and early war units, so that you have some scenarios from Barbarossa. You also have some late war stuff. You also have some American units for a hypothetical U.S. versus the Soviets, kind of Patton's nightmare, post-war, East versus West. They knock heads, alternate history stuff, which is kind of fun, actually. But that's actually going to do it for this look at the game. So that is an introductory look here at the Platoon Commander Deluxe Battle of Kursk from Flying Pig Games, designed by David K. Van Hoos. This is Mark H. Walker's game. And for now, that's going to do it. Please feel free to comment if you have anything to say. Also, if you would like me to do additional games in this series, please feel free to let me know. And by the series, I mean the Platoon series, my Platoon-Level series. I may do GD42 from Multiman Publishing and Fighting Formations Gross Deutschland from GMT Games. If you would like to see those, please let me know. But in the meantime, that's going to do it for now. Please like, share, and subscribe. My name's Joe. This has been Hexed Encountered. And until next time, happy gaming.